Because a lot of people will not be honest with themselves, and no one's perfect. And I don't want to put out that I'm perfect. I don't. There's probably times where I need people to tell me something, but a lot of what has made me successful in my life is an honest self-reflection of here's where I'm doing well and here's where I'm not doing well, and not sugarcoating and being like, yeah, I'm actually doing really good when I'm not. And this was my mission. So I had to learn everything. There was a whole different language. Go. And to me, that was empowering because they said, hey, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to do things. I'm going to give you the freedom to go.
Hello and welcome back here at Feeling Terrific. Today I have a very special guest, not just another one, but the one, Herb Thompson with me. So thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today, Herb. Really appreciate it. And I must say, before I hand it over to you for a quick intro from your side with your own words, when we had the conversation up front to talk about possible topics for this conversation, after this conversation, I was like, I cannot wait to have this conversation because we will tackle topics who are not just important, I would say, but from a personal point of view, they are touching me, right? So they're very important for me as well. So for example, we will talk about leadership, trust, mentorship, grit and resilience. And I think this conversation will be good. So over to you. No pressure, Herb.
No pressure. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the conversation, Christian. First, thanks for having me on. I always love talking with good people and having good conversations, and I know we're going to have that today. So thanks for having me, and let's get rolling.
This is the spirit. So maybe you can give us a short intro about yourself, Herb. Who are you?
Yes, no, thanks. So I start where I am now. How about that? A senior program manager, managing programs here at ServiceNow that are focused on training people globally, and mainly my focus is on veterans here in the United States. But I also look at our global programs and work with that. Before coming here, I joined the Army. I grew up very poor. My family were factory workers. My dad lost his job. We had to go on government services. I joined the Army because that's what I wanted to do here in the U.S., but also I had no other options. And I served 20 years. I was the Army's Drill Sergeant of the Year, so if you would, the top trainer in the military 15 years ago, a long time before all this hair on top of my head and my face. And then I was a Green Beret or Special Forces, so we would go overseas and work with indigenous populations to work by, with, and through to help them out in their country. So hopefully we don't have to send more Americans to do that. I retired. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I got my MBA from Cornell, worked at a partner, and then coming back to that. So I'm here at ServiceNow currently.
Yeah, and you're still smiling, so I assume it's not the worst decision you made, joining ServiceNow.
No, I love ServiceNow. It's a great decision. I love the culture here, but I also think we make the best out of wherever we're at, right? So we can say, hey, this is horrible and be down about it, or we can, hey, how do I make the best of this? And sometimes that is a challenge. We have to put in effort to smile, right? But for me, it's easy to smile at ServiceNow because I work with good people like you and our teammates around the globe. It's just a great culture. So of course I'm smiling. Plus I get to do work that is impactful, and I know it's directly helping people and change their lives and the lives of their children in many cases too. So lots to smile about.
Before we jump into the topic of purpose, right? So as you mentioned how you grew up, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but what was also kind of a partner for you over the time was also gratitude. What would you say, what role does gratitude play in becoming who you are today?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Christian, of gratitude. And we can say it a few different ways, but let's be real. I think every one of us has problems, right? We all grow up and we have issues in life, and it's all on perspective and our mindset of how we look at it. And growing up fairly poor, not having a lot of money, and not having a lot of options, quite frankly, for what life was going to be, I could have stayed in that same track that many friends did, right? And some are still, a bad way, got incarcerated, went down bad roads, where I was grateful for what I had. And quite frankly, grateful for people who took the time to, as a young me, mentor me. And maybe I didn't understand it as a teenager, and maybe they weren't the nicest about it, but I'm grateful they did it. I didn't appreciate it then in certain cases, but time gives us perspective to look back, and I appreciate people caring, right? They cared. So that is really what I'm grateful for, is people cared enough about me to do something and to say, hey, we're going to help you. And it may not be nice, and we may, have to point out your fault and stuff, but I'm grateful they did. And to me, it showed me they cared.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, we just entered now mentorship, and I think it's also something, or it's one thing to receive feedback or mentorship or different perspectives. You might not be thankful about them for the moment or at the moment. But as you mentioned, I mean, self-reflection can be a very powerful tool.
Very powerful. And I think honest self-reflection, right? Because a lot of people will not be honest with themselves, and no one's perfect. And I don't want to put out that I'm perfect. I don't. There's probably times where I need people to tell me something, but a lot of what has made me successful in my life is an honest self-reflection of here's where I'm doing well and here's where I'm not doing well, and not sugarcoating and being like, yeah, I'm actually doing really good when I'm not. Too often people have, issues with trying to identify that, hey, where am I really at? And what's that? That's where them outside forces like mentors or something, people in your life can help you and be like, hold you accountable. Because that's what we're talking about. Hold you accountable for like, hey, you're at this level, and keep you honest. And it can be tough sometimes to do that with ourselves. But if someone else, and especially, I know we'll get into trust, but like someone you trust tells you, it should be. And I know a lot of times in my careers, I've told people, especially back in my military career, of like, hey, when I was mentoring them, or they reported to me, they were my direct report, hey, you need to work on this. And no one in their life, 10, 15, 20 years of their career had ever told them that they needed to improve. Everyone just wanted to be nice and say, hey, you're doing a good job. But to me, that's not being nice, and that's not caring when you see someone who works for you and they can improve and you don't let them know. It's like, well, you don't care then. If you care, you should, there's a professional way to go about telling someone that, but you should definitely tell them so they can improve. Just kind of like, I guess, with kids, right? With our kids, hey, we wouldn't let our kids just do anything. We would, tell them to improve, show them how they can improve, and work with them to do that. Yeah. For me, one of the, another thing to look at is like with parenting. We don't just let our kids do whatever. If we see something they need to improve on, we point it out. We should probably give them a plan of action of, hey, how are you going to correct that? Here's how I'm going to help you. Because we care, right? We care about their success. That's the same people with people around us. We should care enough to share, hey, here's how you can improve in a very professional and nice manner. I'm not saying to go just tell everyone what they're doing wrong, but I need that too. I need people to go, hey, Herb, you're doing this. You can improve here because maybe I'm not seeing it. And that can be very personal. And we can take it very personally, like, and as an attack on me of like, oh, wait, I need to improve. No, I'm good. But usually when I pull back, I can go, okay, they had a point. I do need to improve in this area. And I can be thankful that they care enough to tell me how I can improve or what I can improve on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for example, I also experienced it during my time here at ServiceNow as well, that when I self-reflected, I saw that I took feedback differently sometimes. And I also recognized what kind of impact it did have, right? It's not just having an impact on the performance and on the delivery, but furthermore, it's also on my mind, even though I don't want it to be, right? So I think, as you mentioned, dealing with this in regards to, or based on the help of self-reflection and awareness, can be really, really important and life-changing, to be honest, right?
Definitely life-changing too. And that's what I credit a lot of my success in life to this date is people caring enough to take time to help me. Whether there's many different ways that is shaped and been formed, but like that's helped my personal life, it's helped my professional life, and I want to be where I am today. And people still today help me, and I try to help others and make an impact. I think if we all help each other, it all works out.
Yeah. I'm wondering, when you made the transition from the military to the civil life, kind of, right? I assume that you also had mentors. What would you say is first the importance of those having at the time, but also what role does trust play?
Great question on mentors and trust. For me, coming out of the military, everything was new. It was a whole new environment. I looked at it like this. Instead of deploying overseas to go on a mission there, I was going to deploy into the United States. and this was my mission. So I had to learn everything. There was a whole different language. I had never done interviews. I had never done a resume, I didn't even know what careers they were, right? Because in the military, you kind of follow a path, you go a certain way and you follow that career. I didn't even know what careers interest me. And I'll even take it one step further, and people will laugh, but I didn't have hobbies. Like, there was no hobby. It was work, do my military stuff, or prepare for it, like working out, exercising, studying, doing stuff like that. Or I spent time with my family. There was no hobby. So even like, hey, I can have hobbies now. Like, I have a little extra free time. I don't have to focus 24/7 on a certain thing. Mentors helped a lot in that of really helping me understand what this new world to me was going to be, and what's it like to not be in the military, because that's all I had known in my whole adult life for 20, over 20 years was how do I be a civilian? That, what happens out here? Like, oh, no one's wearing uniforms. Like, oh, I show up on time. How do I carry myself? So there was a lot to learn. And to me, I had a thirst for information. And when I was transitioning out of the military, over a time span of, a couple of years, I had over 2,000 informational interviews. And I wanted information. I might make the wrong decision, but I was going to make an informed decision. But I had this thirst to want to learn more. And through that, some of them people I ended up talking with became mentors. And there was never a, hey, today we agree that there's a mentor-mentee relationship. It just kind of happened through conversations. They became my mentors. Oftentimes what I found is, and this is still true today, like the mentors who mentor me, I'm also a mentor for them, because they're helping me with certain things and I'm helping them with certain things. So it's a very mutual relationship. It's a lot different than maybe the 20-year-old me, where it would have been more probably just straight, I'm a mentee versus a mentor. It's pretty mutual, but it comes back to what you said, trust. Like, I have to trust that person and the advice they're giving me, because everyone's got an opinion. Everyone will give you an insight, but like, hey, what's that based upon? Do they care? Do they have the experience? Have they been around? They understand, and they've seen a lot. So that trust is earned. And some people, that takes a while. And then, so that trust is earned through gradual conversation, getting to know a person. The more you trust them, the more kind of, okay, you're willing to listen to them.
Yeah. No, I think this is also a very important message, that it goes both ways, right? Yes. Mentorship, mentor and mentee. It doesn't matter about the age, but it's about the different perspectives, right? I'm wondering, regarding trust. So when you made the transition, right, from the military to the civil life, how was it for you in the first contact you had, or maybe not at the point you didn't know it was a mentor, but with the first person outside of military to really trust them?
I'll say, for me, it was pretty easy because I was used to working with diverse groups of people. So I wasn't like, oh, I'm military, you're not military, there's a divide, right? Like, I wanted to build that bridge and make a relationship. So for me, it was really understanding a person, and part of that trust is like, what is their background? They didn't just show up today, but like, oh, they've been successful through their careers. I can see their progress through their career. Also, how authentic are they being? I think that's where trust comes in there, of like, are they just talking to me? Are they talking down to me? Or are we getting to know each other? And am I getting to see the authentic person? And there's some very senior executives I know that I see the authentic. It isn't necessarily what they would be in the boardroom meeting or the meeting with a client that they're closing a deal, but I get to see the real authentic person. And that to me is what builds trust. And that's what I pride myself on. As you can see right now, hey, I am who I am, and I'm going to be who I am. So you get the authentic me. I want that authentic person too, and know they care as we go forward. And that's really where the trust comes in.
Yeah. No, and I'm very happy that you had the privilege. I mean, it's also something which is maybe not happening all the time, that you got those people around you, and it's obviously also a good transition. Regarding grit and resilience, right? So do you think you're good with them?
It depends on good, right? Figuratively and literally, I've been punched in the face many times and I'm still here. So I will say, grit and resilience. But again, I think it comes mindset. And for me, I often talk about when I went to Special Forces selection. And I said, I'm going to make it. This is something that, the overall majority of people that go to special forces selection here in the US, they do not make it. But I said, I'm going to make it, or they're going to put me in a body bag. So I say that for the reasons of, I knew how committed I was, and I knew how much I was willing to sacrifice for my goal. And that comes into grit and resilience, because I knew I was willing to sacrifice everything to accomplish my goal. Same when I went to Cornell and trying to get into Cornell. I wasn't necessarily at the level of I'm going to die for this, but I knew how much my commitment was and how much I was willing to sacrifice to get in there and to go get my MBA there. I also keep in mind my motivations. I know the motivations of why I'm doing what I do. So the understanding what I'm willing to sacrifice, knowing what motivates me, that gives me that grit and resiliency to keep coming back, because we all get knocked down in life. So I would say probably most people would say, yeah, he's awesome at grit and resiliency. That doesn't mean there's not days where I have doubt about things, because, hey, we're human and I have doubt. Hey, am I doing this the right way? Oh my God, am I going to mess up this project? Or, hey, am I up for this job? People say imposter syndrome. That's normal, right? I think we have. But again, if I'm being honest with myself, going back to reflection, I know what I'm willing to commit and sacrifice. I know my motivations. I'm honest of where my skill level is. I should be good going forward.
Yeah. How are you overcoming those moments of doubt?
One is sometimes a reality check from a friend or someone else. If I will start to have doubt, someone I trust, going back to trust, someone I trust, whether it's my fiance, Corey, whether it's a close associate friend, and they're like, hey man, you're rocking it, or you're doing this. Sometimes we just need that little bit of motivation to be like, okay, yeah, let me get out of my head and keep moving forward. Some of it is just looking at, okay, let's be real. Success builds upon success. So let me take a moment and let me look back and go, oh, look at all these other times I worried, and look at how I've been successful. I've been able to accomplish my goals. So stop worrying now. Get busy. I can either get busy worrying or get busy actually working towards accomplishing my goal. So let me get more focused and accomplish towards my goal. So that's usually how I go about it.
Yeah. I mean, grit, right? So you probably already read this book, Grit, by Angela Duckworth. So it was recommended to me by my former leader. And when I read it, it was like, I mean, the thing is, on the one side, you have the theory, but then you need obviously also practice it or put it in practice. And I challenged myself. So, I think everyone can kind of relate to it. So at home, I have around whatsoever amount of books, right? So I'm going to read them. I'm going to take the time. It's going to be my priority and stuff. But at the end, you don't want to know the percentage of books I read. However, with the book Grit, ironically enough, I said, okay, I give me 1 week to myself to read it. And I was starting to read it. And after the first pages, it was like, it kind of impacted my mind that grit isn't something not achievable, right? It's something kind of, it's right next to you. Yeah. And you most of the time have kind of a fear. But when you have the perspective right, then it's basically, it can be part of your DNA. So
it is. And it doesn't have to be something big, right? I often go back to, hey, there's times where every human doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning, right? Alarm clock goes off and like, do you have the grit to get up and put your feet on the floor? And that's step one. Now we're moving. I can build upon that. And some people would be like, oh, that's not grit, just waking up. Some days that is grit for people, right? Is they're overcoming a challenge. And even if it's like, hey, I'm feeling lazy today and I just want to sleep in. Oh, wait, I got work to do. I need to get up. That is grit. All the way up to, very big things. But I've talked with people before about for a living, as part of my military work, I would jump out of airplanes, parachute. I don't like flying. And here I went into a career where I had to jump out of airplanes or hang from helicopters and fly all around, but all the way up to that level of grit and resiliency of like, I'm going to do this because I knew what my motivations were and I knew why I was doing it and it was worth overcoming my fears. But it's all something we have to do in here because I've seen it with our kids. And I always like looking at we have 4 teenagers. So each one is like, grit is different in each one. Some of that grit is just, our brains all work differently. And it could be just going through school and getting homework done in a day takes insurmountable grit for one of our kids, where the other one is like, hey, this is easy. I'm done in 5 minutes. But going to have a conversation and talk with somebody, like go talk with someone over there about a job opportunity or just anything, they'll struggle with that and they have to overcome that. So it's really individualized, but all of us can overcome it. Like you said, it's right there. It's within our reach.
Yeah. Maybe coming back to a different or to the first topic, leadership, right? So you have experienced a lot of leadership. You have been a leader. And I mean, to be honest, for me, title is nothing, right? So everyone is a leader in a certain way and in their role and context and so whatsoever. So, but I'm wondering, you have experienced a lot, right? What is for you great leadership? What is the differentiator between good and great leadership?
Difference between good and great leadership. For me, one is how much they care. And then what do they care about? When I say that is I break it down into leadership as a couple things. And this is probably because of my military. There's the work you have to accomplish, but there's also how well do you take care of your people? And we can have wide definitions on that. But to me, the point of a leader is to grow more leaders, the future leaders. So if I move up, the next person moves up, or I help them go somewhere else and be a leader over there. So for me, how does someone do that? They care, right? They have to be the authentic selves. Too often, especially when someone is in a leadership position, I see them, they're not being themselves, right? They feel like they have to act a certain way just because they're a leader. To me, the great leaders have just been themselves. And they haven't tried to please everyone, but they've said, this is who I am. They listen and they're empathetic to those they're leading, but they're like, this is who I am. I can't change who I am and be their authentic self. So to me, the great leaders are very self-aware first of what they don't know. And they're okay with that. They're comfortable with not knowing. I think that's where in my leadership journey, if you will, that's when a big moment to me changed is way back when I was first had leadership responsibilities. I thought I had to know everything. And I thought I had to stand and be loud and proud. And like, I couldn't say I didn't know. To me, the real power became when I was comfortable with who I was as a leader. And I could say, hey, I don't know. We're going to figure this out. What are your ideas? What are your ideas? And listen to everyone. That is really where the switch was flipped in me of where I believe I went from being a leader to, if I could, hopefully someone thinks I'm a great leader, great, but I'm headed towards that track.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. Would you say, or would you agree with if I would add empowerment to your list?
Definitely empowerment. Because if you're a leader, how do you empower your people? That's what you're supposed to be there for, right? I always feel like you're there as a leader to clear obstacles and prevent obstacles from affecting your people and the work you're doing, but also you empower them to do it. So maybe it's just give them the tools. Sometimes that can be just give them a little bit of space. Sometimes that could be a little bit of coaching. It can look very different, but to me, that's a crucial part is empowering your people to get the work done, but also to grow. And I believe here at ServiceNow, we do a pretty good job of focus and not just on the work, but hey, how are you growing as an individual? What are you doing to better yourself? And that to me is key and is a key component of it. Okay. Just the power that unlocks in the brain of like, oh, now they're excited about it. Oh, my boss believes in me. Now I can go. So that was right here. When I first started here, boss was like, hey, here you go. Make this program, run it, improve it as you see fit. I trust you to do whatever you need. If you need something, let me know, go. And that to me was empowering for who I was, and especially my boss understanding who I was, how my mind works and what I needed.
Yeah. And there's, again, coming into play the ability to ask questions and to understand the other person, isn't it?
Definitely. We have to open up that space. There has to be an avenue for people to ask questions, and it's not held against them, right? And like, hey, I can you help me understand this? Or, hey, I need help doing this. We always have to allow that to happen because through that we can grow, we can learn and get better. So that's definitely a good part of it.
Yeah. You also wrote a book, if I'm not mistaken, The Transition Mission. How did it come to that? And what was the driver behind?
For me, I never thought I would write a book. I mean, I'd failed.
Congrats, by the way.
I'd failed the English class in high school, not because I didn't understand English, but it was more because I did not want to study, right? I wasn't engaged. But when I was transitioning out of the military, we've talked a little bit. It was a difficult process for people, and you have to understand and learn a lot of new things. So, and in my free time, I was talking with people, and I would have calls and mentoring, if you will, right? Talking with them, sharing ideas. And I was coming back from the back surgeon, and a person called me, and they wanted help, right? They're like, "Hey, I'm transitioning out of the military." And within a few minutes, they realized I was authentic, I guess, and said, "Hey, I'm effing lost. I don't know what I'm going to do. Can you help me out in this process?" And I realized I needed to do more. So that was on a Friday evening. I sat down and wrote 70 some plus pages by Sunday evening. So most of the book was, it's a very short book. It's only a little over 100 pages. So I wrote, 3/4 of it in a weekend, but it was to help others. And hey, how can I get them jump started? Here's not the final solution. Here's not a checklist to go by, but how can I help them and get them started on what they need to do in their careers as they transition out of the military? And that's how the book came about. And it's to me, it's so rewarding when people reach out, and it happens all the time. People reaching out saying, "Hey, I learned from this. Thank you for what you're doing. It really helped me out. And I'm now doing X, Y, and Z." And it's just that, to me, you can't buy. And that's what I love. And that's what drives me. It's just that inner, like, just fuzzy good feeling that you help someone a little part because they did it, but you did one little part to help them on their journey. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I really can feel the intrinsic motivation from you to give back. I think this is a good wording of it. Maybe coming to the end, Herb. So basically what we started is that the previous guests ask a question for the next one, although he or she doesn't know who the next one will be. So the question for you is intrinsic motivation making a difference in founding a company? So obviously you didn't found a company. However, what do you say is intrinsic motivation making a difference in your current job at ServiceNow as senior program manager, veteran programs?
For me, yes. For me, it's funny you asked that question because we were just talking about it, right? Like that intrinsic motivation, that drives me. That is knowing myself, that is one of my driving factors, more so than like, say, salary, right? Or money. So I think looking for career-wise, for me, it is that. I think some people need to ask of like, what is their main motivator? How would they categorize their motivations? Because if I'm starting a company and my whole goal is to make money, that doesn't necessarily correlate with the intrinsic, motivation of, hey, I want to help people. You can do both, but like sometimes they compete with each other. So for me, yeah, I'm getting to do what I love to do here. I'm getting to help people, getting to make an impact around the globe. So for me, it's a home run for me.
And we leave it by the home run. What question do you want to ask the next person? Next guest?
I would say, what is the biggest failure in their career that they learn from? Because we always talk about the successes and but like, hey, I messed up. How did I learn from that?
Yeah, this is a good one. I'm curious about the answer. But thank you, Herb, really much for your time. It was a real pleasure. Hope to see you maybe one day in person when you will come to Munich, or I will come to the US. But I think, I need to work on a business case, however. No, but over to you for the final words.
No, thanks for having me on, Christian. I love that you're doing this. I love, I'm honored that you reached out and wanted to have me on as a guest. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll tag up again down the road.
Sounds like a plan. Then greetings from Munich, and thank you again.